Diet, we all know what it is, folks, and I'm going to take you through a couple of food groups and food classifications, starting with over here, a suggestion of carbohydrates. Now, I'm not going to get into kind of the biology of digestion here. I'm going to assume that to some degree you know that starches go into the body. They are broken down through the process of digestion, both mechanical and chemical, and they're broken down into simple sugars, glucose, and then they're absorbed in the small intestine. I'm not going to teach that here because I'm assuming you know that process from elsewhere. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the most fundamental of points about what these food groups are for. The most important word we can use to describe carbohydrates is energy. In fact, glucose, which is the derivative of carbohydrate, is the preferred energy source of all cells. I'll say that again. It's the preferred energy source of all cells. So carbohydrates are critical to providing cells with the capacity to release energy. Secondly, we get them, of course, in two large groups, or two fundamental groups. Above in the image here, we have starches. Pretty much we have our potatoes, we have our pasta, our rice, our bread, starches. But we also need to remember that starches are broken down into sugars. And again, glucose is the one I mentioned before. In fact, let me put that in here. Glucose is actually what we call a monosaccharide, which means it's a single sugar. It's a very, let's call it a small-scale sugar, for want of a non-biological phrase. But what I want you to realise with glucose is it is, of course, as you guys probably already know, it is the energy source for both aerobic and anaerobic work. Don't forget that glucose plus oxygen goes through the aerobic energy release cycle, and of course in the anaerobic pathway we've got glucose goes to lactic acid, the release of energy. So glucose is fundamental, coming back to that original point. Now let's take things further. Let's talk, let me choose a nice pinky purpley colour. Let's talk about here fats. Now, you probably know fats as lipids. You probably know that fats are broken down into, in fact, let's put that in there. They're referred to as lipids. So we're talking about the same thing here across your biology studies. And don't forget that your fats are broken down, as you probably know, into glycerol and fatty acids. Now, I'm not going to get into the sort of illustrations and science of that here. I'll assume that you've got some awareness of that. But the most important thing I can stress to you is that fats are an energy store. Okay, so we really use them as a potential energy store, and that energy is stored under the skin. Now, there is a little bit of storage around organs and a couple of other sort of places, but that's a really important point. So that is energy stored under the skin. Let's call it subcutaneous fat. That, you know, you might if you pinch sort of one of the, how would you word it, one of the plumper areas of your body, such as one's tummy or lower back, or I'm not saying anyone is plump. I'm saying that's where we human beings tend to store fat, right? If you pinch your skin, just underneath there is a layer of fat. That's what that is. It insulates you, keeps you warm as well, because we as a mammal have far less than some other mammals, for example. Anyway, the point I want to get to is that's for, and I want to stress to you that fat is a fuel source for the aerobic pathway only. So by eating our oils, our fat-based fruits, vegetables such as avocado, by taking oils from nuts, from fish, from meat, what we are doing here is we're providing a potential energy that can be utilized in lower intensity exercise. Effectively, you know, when we're doing, so let's call it jogging, let's call it long walking, let's call it warming up. We are using that kind of aerobic energy pathway, and we can do so with fats, lipids as the source. I did make one mistake there. I said warming up. There's a little nuance about fats. In terms of energy, they take about 20 minutes to start processing, so I'm going to take back my warm-up description. Now, where I do want to go with this is I want to talk to you about proteins. And again, you guys will know that proteins are chains of amino acids, and you will know that through digestion, we break them down into individual amino acids, we deliver them. That's obviously in various places, especially the stomach. We absorb them in the small intestine, we get them to the cells, they go to the ribosomes, and we constitute or we construct human proteins. I'm not going to talk about that here, even though I just did. What we want to know is that they break down into amino acids. And by the way, it's really important that you can connect your studies, biology to PE, chemistry to PE, chemistry to biology to PE, etc., etc. There's others as well. But this is where I really want to take this. Our nuts, our pulses, our eggs, our lean meats, our fish, this protein basis, what does it provide us? Energy. Now, big asterisk. I'm going to put a big asterisk by that. It provides us with growth. It provides us with repair. Now, because I've said the words growth and repair there, I really want you to link this to the adaptation process. So when we train ongoing over a period of time, we go through physiological adaptations. It is the growth and repair properties of protein that allow that to happen. As you can see here, we derive those proteins from things like eggs, chicken, pulses, nuts, eggs, meat. I meant to say not chicken. If you're a vegetarian, there may be other sources that you use here. Okay, so that's what I want. That's what I want to get across. Oh, sorry, my asterisk here. Protein can be used as an energy source, but it is in very rare circumstances. So without getting grotty, there's two reasons the human body would use protein as an energy source. One is in periods of starvation, and literally the body would consume its own protein stores, muscle tissue, eventually organs. Obviously death follows in those situations. The other one is sort of in certain eating disorders this can happen. I'm not going to get into that here, but you might want to ponder that one. Now, finally, I want to talk about water. And what a lovely photo. That photo alone makes me thirsty. When I first saw it, I thought, no, I'm not going to go down that road. But what a lovely glass of water with a bit of lemon. It doesn't need the lemon, but this is what it's for, guys. Water, as part of a balanced diet, is about maintaining hydration. Why is that important? Well, again, think back to some of your other studies. Think, for example, that water is what sort of is the fundamental basis of blood plasma. Without it, you're going to kind of air quotes dry up. That's quite an extreme case, obviously. But the other one, think about water from the perspective of cell function. You guys know how important, for example, cytoplasm is in cells. It suspends all those bits in the cell, those organelles. So, of course, that's really, really important for cell function. And finally, think about it in more like a sport, a performance sense. Think about concentration, mistakes, errors. When we get dehydrated, we can get sort of poorer of mind, if I can put it that way. Therefore, maintaining hydration is a really good strategy for trying to prevent those things. Cheers.